Thank you. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Ballabha Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivaradhari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Tira Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Tira Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Tira Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Nitya Vishnu Vishnu Par Paramahamsa Parivra Jakacharya Ashtotara Sutta Shri Srimad His Divine Grace of High Charana Vinda Bhaktivinoda Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki ISKCON BBD Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Nitya Vishnu Vishnu Par Paramahamsa Parivra Jakacharya Ashtotara Sutta Shri Srimad His Divine Grace of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Ki Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Sakaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shamakund Radha Kun Giri Govardhana Ki Vraj Bhumi Shri Vrindavan Ki Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Purushottam Chitra Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Ganga Mai Ki Jamuna Mai Ki Bhakti Devi Ki Tulasi Maharani Ki Samaveta Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai Nitai Gopremanandi. Oh, glories to some devotees. Oh, glories to some devotees. Oh, glories to some devotees. Oh, glories, Lotus feet of Sri Guru and Sri Guranga. Oh, glories to the Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Prayanalpa Ayusa Sabhya Prayanalpa Ayusa Sabhya Prayanalpa Ayusa Sabhya Kalau Asmin Juge Janaha Kalavasmin Juge Janaha Kalavasmin Juge Janaha Prayanalpa Ayusa Sabhya Kalavasmin Juge Janaha Manda Sumanda Matayo Manda Sumanda Matayo Manda Sumanda Matayo Manda Bhagya Hi Upadrutaha Manda Bhagya Hi Upadrutaha Manda Bhagya Hi Upadrutaha Manda Sumanda Matayo Manda Bhagya Hi Upadrutaha Prayanalpa Yusha Sabhya Kalavasmin Juge Manjanaha Manda Sumanda Matayo Manda Bhagya Hi Upadrutaha Prayanalpa Yusha Sabhya Kalavasmin Juge Janaha Manda Sumanda Matayo Manda Bhagya Hi Upadrutaha Water here. Vaishnavis? Prayena, almost always. Alpa, meager. Ayusha, duration of life. This ayu means like one's life, so Ayurveda is, how to maintain the duration of one's life, or essentially how to stay healthy. And as we'll see in this verse, in this age, people have got no idea how to maintain themselves, and that just their very lifestyle is reducing their longevity. Sabhya, member of a learned society. Now this word here, sabhya, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his translation, he uses it in quite a different way, and he points out that worthy sage capable of knowing what is beneficial at this time. Because someone who's in a sabha, or an assembly, or sabhya, a member of the assembly, or a learned society, it's not just an assembly. Sometimes we feel that a sabha, just like Krishna, he had his sabha, his assembly house, but he just didn't fill the assembly house up with fools and rascals. Like you see, they have these sabhas now in Australia, like the House of Parliament, for instance. They have the House of Representatives and the Senate. And, if you're at all aware of what goes on in the country, the caliber of the persons that, occupy those places. Just like recently, the guy who was the Deputy Prime Minister of the country had to resign from his post because he got his girlfriend pregnant. Under normal circumstances, it wouldn't be so bad, but he was already married to someone else. And then he tried to defend it. He tried to cover it up, and he tried to defend it. So it's okay. So this is the caliber of people who are leading the society. But actually, a sabha is meant to be, populated with people who are not just knowledgeable, but also they have values, they have, principles. But in this day and age, the principles and the values are gradually disappearing. Every generation, you'll find that the values are decreasing less and less, the principles are decreasing less and less. There's a Bengali saying, it's a bit amusing, is if one person passes water standing up, the next person will pass water running. Now, I saw a practical demonstration of this the other day in Moolumbar. I was just coming out of the bank, and a health food shop was just down from the bank. Just coming out of the health food shop, and this girl walks into the health food shop carrying a baby, and the baby's suckling on her breast. It used to be that people would sit down and they'd hold the child and they'd cover the child over so no one could see it. Now it's just becoming like a big public demonstration, because really what they want to do is they want to walk around naked, but they use the child as a way of showing off their bodies. But she's walking around with the child drinking milk from her breast. So it's just, we can see it's becoming more and more degraded. Just little things, they seem like little things, but eventually you'll see it becomes a big deviation. And I was listening to a class on Prabhupada Maharaj the other day, and he was talking about this, how we see that, like when Srila Prabhupada started this society, it was very strict. Even though Prabhupada was very lenient in many ways, but in terms of how to practice Krishna consciousness, he gave very clear guidelines. About rising early in the morning. He said, one who doesn't rise early in the morning is not serious about spiritual life. So he gave the guidelines about rising early in the morning. He gave guidelines about how to, actively practice as a devotee. I mean, rising early, chanting 16 rounds, following the 4 regular principles, attending the full morning program, etc., etc. Now we see that this is slowly becoming more and more eroded, and that some folks, they even think that, that their spiritual practices is just turn up for kirtan once a week. And they have, the kirtan movement is becoming very popular. And of course, we don't criticize that because it is in fact an element of bhakti. They're doing something, but the full program that Prabhupada gave, this is what's going to help us get back to the spiritual realm, not just we take up one small part of it. Because the kirtans, it's nice that the kirtan movement is becoming more and more popular, and we appreciate that this is only due to the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that people have an interest in chanting the holy name. But we need to keep in mind that this is just part of the process. It's not the whole process. It's just like, there's that story you hear sometimes about blind men trying to understand what the elephant looked like. One man's got the trunk, and he says, "Oh, it's like a fire hose." And the other one's feeling the leg. He says, "Oh, no, the elephant's like a tree trunk, like a tree." And the other one's got the tail, and they're saying it's like a brush. Because they're all blind, they actually can't see the whole elephant. But the person who has vision understands what the elephant looks like. So, and also with the spiritual process, just taking up one element of the spiritual process is not sufficient. One has to take up the whole program. So anyhow, I thought that was interesting that word sabya, how Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has used it in his translation. Kalau, in this age of Kali. And what's the symptomatic, the prime symptom of the age of Kali? Quarrel. It's called the age of quarrel. And we see, over the smallest thing, people have big arguments. They're willing to kill each other over the smallest thing. I remember when I was young, maybe about 17, 18. Looking back now, it seems young, but it's a long time ago. And I knew this fellow who stabbed someone over a Bic disposable cigarette lighter. At the time, they cost 99 cents each. And he stabbed someone because the guy was trying to steal his cigarette lighter. Can you imagine that? Over $1. He was ready to kill this person. But that's it may seem kind of extraordinary to us, but that's the symptom of this age, is people will quarrel over the most trifling of things. And so we need to be aware of that when we're interacting with people in this age. And the reason that we're willing to quarrel is because they're so disturbed. This is one of the prime symptoms of people in this age, is they're very, very disturbed. So the smallest thing sets them off. There's no tolerance, there's no empathy, there's no sympathy, there's no understanding, there's no compassion. People are hard-hearted. Why? Because they spend their entire life pursuing sense gratification. That's all they're interested in, is how to enjoy their senses. And they think that this is the advancement of life. They think, oh, I have a lot of sense gratification, I've got a very good life. No sense gratification, we've got a very bad life. And they look at the life of a sage or a sadhu and they think, oh, this is a very, very horrible life. The idea of renouncing all these material things is a very horrible idea. Asmin, herein, juge, age, janaha, the public, mandaha, lazy, sumanda mataya, misguided, manda bhagya, unlucky. So another very interesting word here in this verse, because does anyone understand what bhagya means? Yeah, very fortunate generally. There's Bhagavana Jeev, Guru Krishna Prasad Kripa Poi Bhakti Lata Bij, one who's very fortunate. They'll get the opportunity to take shelter of bona fide spiritual master and ultimately Krishna. But Manda Bhagya, because this word Bhagya is related to Bhagavan. So ultimately, the person who is Bhagya has a connection with Krishna. It's not just like, someone's won the lottery or whatever, and they become very wealthy. That's not what fortune is about. In the spiritual sense, we're understanding fortune in relation to Krishna. So someone who's fortunate actually has a connection with Krishna. So Manda Bhagya then means someone who doesn't have a connection with Krishna. Therefore, they are the most unfortunate person. Because it's just like, we're losing our connection with our most dearly beloved person. We don't even understand that we're meant to have this connection. So therefore, these persons are considered to be the most unfortunate. Here it's just being translated as unlucky, but actually there's no one more unfortunate than them. He, and above all, upadruttaha, disturbed. Okay, so Prabhupada's translation. O learned one, in this iron age of Kali, men have but short lives. They are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. It's like the national anthem of Kali Yuga. Responsively, please. O learned one, in this iron age of Kali, men have but short lives. They are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. This is so descriptive of what's going on in this age. You know, I mean, talk about lazy. I met this guy maybe 40 years ago, maybe a bit more than that. I can't remember what his name was. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. It was in Brisbane, and he was what you call a couch potato. Yeah? The guy was so lazy he couldn't even get off the couch, and this is before the days of remote controls and things like that. So the guy used to just lie on the couch all day and watch television. And he was so lazy, he made up his own remote control. He got a broomstick and he cut a slot in the end of it. So instead of getting off the couch, he could reach up and put the slot over the channel. You know how they used to have those rotating dials to change the channel? They don't have them on TVs anymore. They just have a remote control. And he put it over the thing and just rotate it and change the channels. And he'd be able to turn the volume up and down and turn it on and off. He just was lying on the couch all day long. He'd get up and go to the toilet or to get something to eat, and that was about it. You know? And that's the nature of people in this age. They're so lazy. And they think it's a glorious thing if they can figure out how to achieve something without doing anything. But we see here, in this section here, because this is a really important part of the Bhagavatam. In the previous verse, verse 9, the sages asked Sutta Goswami the first question. You know, what is the best thing for people in this age? How can they actually understand what is the goal of life? And then in the next verse they ask another question, and the verse after that. So the first three questions come up in these verses here. And they're kind of portraying a little bit about the difficult situation of this age. Keep in mind, this was spoken more than 5,000 years ago. They're saying back then the people are lazy. I mean, what would they think about now? You know? I mean, things have degraded, and saying here, always disturbed. 5,000 years ago, they're saying always disturbed. What do we say now? Disturbance is like the status quo. If you're not disturbed, you're considered abnormal. You know? And people are just so disturbed. And we recently had a conversation up in New Gopinath with some of the senior Vaishnavas there about how to deal with people who have mental issues or mental challenges, because what we're finding is more and more people are coming to the temple who have mental health issues of one type or another, whether some kind of Asperger's syndrome or they're schizophrenic or depressed or whatever. And this is just the nature of this age. We're going to find this is not going to decrease, it's going to increase, because we find more and more people are disturbed because of just the polluted atmosphere in this age. There's so much pressure. Just the basic things of existing in this world, there's so much pressure. Even just to have a place to live, to get food on the table, to take care of your family and relatives and stuff like that. There's so much pressure, to maintain, just to have a house these days. The idea of purchasing a house on a normal wage is practically non-existent. I met this lady some years ago in Lorne. I used to live down in Lorne. And she and her husband, when they were younger, had purchased 2 blocks of land for £50 each, which probably nowadays is equivalent of a few $1,000s. Now to buy a block of land for a house, say next door here, how much would you pay? 2 million, 3 million? Where we are, to buy a block of land, you're talking $300,000, and that's out in the country. In a small country town which has got a population of like 10,000 people, 12,000 people, you're going to pay $300,000, $400,000 just for a piece of ground. Previously, you didn't have to pay anything for it; it was free. You just build your house, simple house, mud hut or whatever, and live there. But now, It's become a big profiteering thing. So just to have the land to build a house on is going to cost you so much. And then to build a house, you're going to spend maybe $100,000, $200,000 to build a house. And the interesting thing is, the house is so poor quality, you're lucky if it lasts 30 years. Then you have to pull it down and build another one. That's the way the banks are really clever. They're designed like this. That, when you get a house loan usually goes 25 or 30 years, right? At which time the house is useless. You've got to get rid of it. Get another one. Get another loan from the bank. So the bank just keeps you shackled to the payments the rest of your life if you're foolish enough to go down that path. So it's a very, very difficult situation in this age. And then, to eat. My gosh, you have to be a millionaire to eat in this age. Things are getting so expensive. And also, not only that, are things getting so expensive, just like, it used to be you get an avocado, they were really big and they had a little seed inside of them. Now, they're really small, they've got a really big seed inside of them. The same with all the stone fruits, with apricots and peaches and all these types of things. A little bit of flesh around the outside, big stone. And as Kali Yuga progresses, the stone's going to get bigger and bigger, and all it'll be around the outside is skin. Nothing else. That's it. That's just the nature of Kali Yuga. And you'll find that people will live on things like vitamin pills and supplements and stuff like that, because there won't be any edible food unless you want to eat each other, which is what is predicted, is people will start to eat each other at the end of Kali Yuga. And even now that sort of stuff's happening. People are eating human fetuses and things like that. So Kali Yuga, very, very difficult time, and it doesn't get any easier. They're fond of this, in Australia they're fond of this saying when they think they're enjoying themselves a lot, they say it doesn't get any better than this. And that's actually the fact, because as Kali Yuga progresses, it's going to get more and more difficult, and you're going to suffer more and more. And the only solution, that's what's being pointed out here, we'll read the purport in a minute, the only solution actually in this age, and this is because the sages they're seeing, how difficult Kali Yuga is, but not only they're seeing at that time, they're seeing because they have the vision, because they're Brahmins, they're actually able to see the future. They can see from the knowledge of the scriptures what's going to happen in the future in Kali Yuga. So they're very, very concerned. This is the nature of a saintly person. A saintly person is not a person who's simply interested in their own welfare, in their own well-being. They're more interested in the well-being of others than they are interested in the well-being of themselves. And Krishna explains at the end of the Gita, the end of the 18th chapter, he says, there's no person in this world who's more dear to me than that person who's spreading the message of the Bhagavad Gita. So the person who dedicates their life to giving Krishna consciousness to others, they don't have to worry about themselves, because they become dear to Krishna. And if you become dear to Krishna, what do you have to worry about? Krishna will take care of everything. So, the sages, that their whole motive here, we'll see as this chapter unfolds, that they're simply interested in how to benefit the people. What is the best thing? They're asking, give us the scriptures in a shortcut form. Because we understand that there's 114,000, I think, books in the Vedas. How can we study all that in one short lifetime? If we're lucky, we're going to live, maybe if we're unlucky, we're going to live for 70 or 80 years. And I remember when my mother-in-law, when she was getting old, she died when she was 97, I think. And I remember saying to her when she was about 94 or 5, I said, if you keep going, you'll get a letter from the Queen soon, because when people get to 100, they get a letter from the Queen congratulating them on getting old. And her response was, I don't want to. I want to go. I've had enough. Because as you get older, the body starts to deteriorate dramatically. Even when you're in your 60s and 70s, the body's significantly deteriorated. What to speak of 90s or 100? Very, very deteriorated. So, I forgot what the point was there. Yeah, so the point I'm making was the sages can see, how much people are suffering in this age. Therefore, they want to somehow reconnect them with Krishna, so they can actually understand what is the goal of life. Because in this age we see how many people that you meet really understand the goal of life. They're thinking the goal of life, in a country like Australia, is to have a big house with a double garage, a nice car, 4-wheel drive, a boat, a swimming pool in the backyard, a few kids, wife's got to be really beautiful. I've got to have a job where I make lots of money. That's their goal of life. TV, color TV in every room. If they've got all these things, they think they're happy. But then they wind up, I remember years ago being in, we were doing Sankirtan in Brisbane, and I was at Garden City. Garden City is one of the largest shopping centres there. And I saw this guy, family comes out with a trolley full, big trolley full, brimming over with all these Christmas presents, a huge amount of stuff they had. And the kids are all, oh, mummy, they're so happy kind of thing. And the guy's walking out, he's got, in one hand, he's got this clutch of bills. And the other hand, he's got his credit card. And he's looking at it, he's thinking to himself, how am I going to pay for this? That's what happens, is they spend their whole life struggling to maintain the status quo, the standard of living. I used to work with this guy when I was a kid. I was about, I think I was 17, and his neighbour wound up committing suicide because he had all these debts to the bank and he just had no way of paying them. He just bought himself a boat, he bought a nice car, he bought a house, and everything was on mortgage. Unintelligent people actually, go in debt. Sudras, they go into debt. Someone who's actually intelligent, a Vaishya, never go into debt. They just put their money away, and they buy things cash. Because if you buy a house, for instance, on a loan, when you add it all up with the interest, you wind up paying, if it's a $400,000 house, you wind up paying $1.2 million. So you could have bought 3 houses if you're just patient. Put your money away, and then you could rent 2 houses and have the income come from those houses. But someone who's a Sudra, they want sense gratification right now. Give it to me now. Therefore, they get involved in all these ridiculous, difficult arrangements where they spend the rest of their life paying for it. That's one of the symptoms of people in this age, is they want sense gratification immediately. They want it right now. They don't have patience. Because they're not directed properly. And Prabhupada explains it. Really amazing purport, this one. I'll read from this one because I've got certain things highlighted which I wanted to comment on. The devotees of the Lord are always anxious for the spiritual improvement of the general public. Not like they're just concerned about it, they're actually anxious. They really are concerned because someone who's actually a Vaishnava is paradukha dukhi. When they see someone else suffering, they suffer. But most people in this age are para dukkha sukhi. When they see someone suffering, they become very happy. Like, I remember someone telling us a story about, in New York, there was a girl who was, disturbed. It's the nature of this age, it's not surprising. So she's standing on the ledge of this building, wanting to jump off. And someone in the crowd calls out to her, go ahead, jump, it's not worth it. You're just going to suffer anyhow. And what a horrible mentality, is telling a person to end their lives because there's so much misery and suffering in this world, and they just what it gets down to is they just want to see someone go splat on the ground. Such a heartless civilization is that they have no compassion for the suffering of another living entity. How much torment must a person be going through to get to the point where they want to end their own life, thinking this will be, I'll be happy from this. So devotees are always anxious for the spiritual improvement of the general public. When the sages of Naimisharanya analyzed the state of affairs of the people in this age of Kali, they foresaw that men would live short lives. In Kali Yuga, the duration of life is shortened, not so much because of insufficient food. I mean, who here is hungry? No one. In a country like Australia, there's not that many hungry people. Not so much because of insufficient food, but because of irregular habits. This is what actually shortens a person's life. As we see, Krishna explains, he says, Yukta hara viharasya, Yukta cetasa kamasu, Yukta swapna vibodasya, yoga bhavati dukhaha. That one who's regulated their habits of eating, sleeping, recreation and work can mitigate all material pangs by practicing the yoga system. So just by regulation, by becoming regulated in all our habits, we reduce the suffering in this world. And that's one of the important things about the process of bhakti that's been given to us by Srila Prabhupada. we're becoming regulated. We rise early in the morning. It's good if you can rise at the same time every day. It's good if you go to bed at the same time every day. It's good if you change your japa. Because what happens in that situation is you're forcing your mind and your senses to become regulated. You're controlling them. You're forcing them under control. And then you start to see what's the mind, what's the senses, what's the intelligence. You see how these things are acting. Because the mind, there's that interesting painting in the Bhagavad Gita. You see where there's this chariot, and there's the 5 horses and the reins, right? And there's like, so the 5 horses. Anyone know the painting I'm talking about? What do you notice on the horses? The 5 senses. You've got the nose, the tongue, the eyes. On the chest of each horse is one of the senses. And the mind is the reins. And then the intelligence is the driver. And then we see on the back, what do you notice on the back? The soul. And what's the soul doing? Screaming. Screaming in complete fear, because what do you notice? Where's the chariot going? No, in the painting, where's the chariot going? Over a cliff. You look at the front of the painting, there's a cliff there. Yeah? So, and the chariot driver, the passenger is completely fearful. So this is the situation of everyone in this material world, is their senses are out of control and they're completely disturbed. They've got no idea of what's going to happen to them. And because the senses, why? Because the senses, the mind and the intelligence are completely unregulated. They're just doing their own thing. But if you can bring, and Krishna talks about this in the 6th chapter of the Gita. The 6th chapter of the Gita is quite an interesting chapter, Jnana Yoga. And it's all focused about bringing the consciousness under control, because once you bring the consciousness under control, the mind. Because interesting thing I was listening to the other day as a lecture of Shiva Ram Maharaj on the mode of goodness, and he was talking about what is the natural state of the mind. What is the mind produced from? Goodness. So when the mind is in the mode of goodness, it's when it's peaceful. When it's affected by any other mode, the mind is very disturbed. So, but the Jnana Yoga, this chapter Jnana Yoga, focuses on controlling the mind, bringing the mind under control. Because if you can bring the mind under control, what does the mind become? Your best friend. But if the mind's not controlled, it's your worst enemy. Why? Because it just directs the senses here, there, and everywhere. Just remember we used to do Sankirtan, and for lunch break we'd go into the supermarket and we'd sit in the food court and just get maybe some chips or something like that. And you watch the people coming in, just being led everywhere by their senses. Mind is telling them hungry, so they go to the food court and they're just like, you've got these big glass cabinets, with all the things really nicely arrayed, and they're just like, the senses just like looking. Oh, I'll have that. They're just led by their senses. No consideration of what eating that is going to do to the body, or the karma involved in like eating some flesh or something from an animal. No concern about that. It's all about the tongue wants. Therefore, the tongue is my master, and I'm a good servant. I'll do whatever the tongue wants. So they don't think about it. They're just main thing is just they're led by the senses, and that's the situation of everyone in this age. Because they're dominated by the senses, they don't keep regular habits. Therefore, they're decreasing the duration of their life. By keeping regular habits and eating simple food, not curd sabjis every day, by eating simple food, any man can maintain his health. Overeating, over sense gratification, over-dependence on another's mercy, and artificial standards of living sap the very vitality of human energy. Now, it just might seem like a simple statement in one of Prabhupada's purports, but this one sentence is so packed with meaning. First off, he's saying overeating. Control your senses. Learn how to control your senses. We need to eat simply every day, and not just eat till we're sort of packed up to the neck. Prabhupada did say in the beginning we should do that. But how long does the beginning go for? 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, and we wind up, way overweight? No. In the beginning stage, when the first few years, you might want to do that. You might want to eat, to keep the senses a bit controlled. But after some time, we need to learn to control the senses. And once we learn to control the senses, it means the mind's also coming to control, because the mind is controlling the senses. Over sense gratification. Sense gratification needs to be there. We have senses. We need to keep the senses satisfied. But not that we indulge the senses. And we see it's so symptomatic of the inhabitants of this age, is basically they're practicing the path of pravritti marg. Not knowingly, but their idea is they just keep like saturating the senses with intoxication and various elements of the objects of the senses, hoping they'll become satisfied. But they never do, because they just want more and more and more and more. And it's described, Krishna describes also in the Gita that dushparena nalayana cha, that there's lust that burns like fire and it's never satisfied. And it's just like, with a fire, you put on more and more and more fuel, and what happens? The fire just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And the more fuel, the bigger it gets, the more fuel it needs to sustain itself. And then you put on more fuel, it gets bigger again. And you keep feeding it fuel, it gets bigger and bigger, and it needs more and more to keep going. And that's what the senses are like. It's just like, you see in this day and age, people, when they're trying to keep the children happy, they just give them this and give them that and give them this, and it's just, there's no end to it. I mean, you go to some people's houses, and the children have got a whole room just for their toys. And still the toys are spread all over the house. And there's so many toys. I mean, I remember when I was young, my parents were saying, you're just never satisfied. You want this, that, and the other thing. We only had a few simple things. And they said, when we were kids, we just had my parents just gave me a stick and a piece of string. And, it was always, when I was young, it was like, reminds me of something funny I used to listen when I was a kid. It's always like that. It's like, when I was young, we never had this type of stuff. But it's just, I guess it's, as the age progresses, then people need more and more to have the illusion of being satisfied. But it's only an illusion, because you never become satisfied, because you always want more. If you're actually satisfied, you wouldn't want anything else. You'd be happy with that. Okay, that's all I need in life. But we see in this age, people are not satisfied. And then Prabhupada talks about over-dependence on another's mercy. And this, from my understanding, we can look at this in many different ways. Yes, obviously we need the assistance of so many different persons to live in this age, but not that we become completely dependent. Not that we can't function without someone else's help or assistance. We need, as Prabhupada would say, we need to be independently thoughtful. We need to be independent. We need to function ourselves, not that we just give over our intelligence, give over our responsibility to everyone else. We need to, because the reality of it is we are responsible for our own actions. We can't just like palm it all off to the Guru, for instance, and just say, oh, Gurudev, by your mercy, everything. But no, you need to be actively independent in this. You need to be thoughtful about your life. You need to understand you are responsible for your actions. No one else is responsible. And if someone talks you into doing something, they may have a part that's improper. They may have an element of responsibility there, but ultimately you did it. It's like you put a glove on your hand and you strike someone with a stick. It's not the glove's responsibility. It's your responsibility, because you did it. The glove is just a covering. So we can't sort of avoid taking responsibility. So becoming over-dependent. I mean, this is one way of looking at it. I think there obviously are other ways you can look at this. And artificial standards of living is so typical of Western society. Is they have this artificially elevated standard of living, and everyone, the whole notion of keeping up with the Joneses. They've got a swimming pool in the backyard, so we need to have a swimming pool. They've got a fancy SUV, we need to have that. Well, they've got this, we need to have that. They've got a 4-bedroom house, we'll have a 5-bedroom house. Not only they want to have it as good, they want to have more and more and more and more. And therefore they have this artificial standard of living with all these things they just don't need. You go into any house in a middle-class suburb, and you'll see so many things in the cupboard they don't use. Sometimes you go to people's houses, and you look in the wardrobe, and they've got more clothes than they can wear. I mean, how many sets of clothes do you need? You might have 3 or 4 sets of clothes. I mean, that's all I've got. I'm traveling with 3 devotees. That's all I need. So how many pairs of shoes do you need? There was one famous person, Imelda Marcos. She had thousands of pairs of shoes. You only got 2 feet. How many pairs of shoes can you wear? So, it's artificial standards of living. And because all their energy is going into maintaining this artificial standard of living, and as I was saying before, they're in debt to the bank or the finance company stuff, so it's just sapping their very vitality because they spend their whole life working like an ass just to maintain their standard of living. But actually, this is not what life is meant for. Simple living. Just whatever you need, whatever's required to keep the body and soul together so you can serve Krishna. And higher thinking. Discuss the Bhagavatam. Therefore, the duration of life is shortened. So Prabhupada is saying it's not from lack of food. Scientists are saying, because people are hungry, they're dying. But no, they're not. Malnutrition is a different thing. But the people of this age are also very lazy, not only materially, but in the matter of self-realization. The human life is especially meant for self-realization. That is to say, man should come to know what he is, what the world is, and what the supreme truth is. So sambandha, avidaya, prayoja. We should come to know these things. And Mahaprabhu, he points out that in all the Veda, there is only 3 topics. There's sambandha, avidaya, and prayoja. Who I am, what's my relationship with the Lord, how to approach the Lord, and what is the goal. That's all it's about. That's all our existence is about, is these 3 things. A materialistic person can look at so many other things, but they don't even understand the very basics of what Prabhupada is saying is they don't even know who they are. And we see that Sanatana Goswami, when he first approached Lord Chaitanya, he said that. He said, people are claiming that I'm a learned man, but I don't even know who I am. I don't know why I'm suffering the burning 3-fold miseries. So he was saying, I'm not actually learned at all. But we understand he was acting out of humility because he understood who he was and he understood what the goal of life was. Human life is a means by which the living entity can end all the miseries of the hard struggle for life in material existence, and by which he can return to Godhead, his eternal home. Human life is the only place you can achieve that. Animals can't achieve it, plants can't achieve it, no other living entity can achieve that. And in this age, in this planet, is a particularly good time for the living entities to understand their position, understand who they are, understand the goal of life, understand what is the process, what's the world about, what it's meant for. Because Lord Chaitanya has just appeared only 500 years ago, and he's established the Yuga Dharma. So it's a particularly good time for us to practice Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada goes on to say, he says, but due to a bad system of education, men have no desire for self-realization. They don't even know. Nate vidu svatakatim hi vishnum. They don't even know what the goal of life is. They don't even know svatakatim. The katim means like the destination, swa artha, the destination which is the best for them. Swa means the self, artha means that which is good for you. They have no idea what the supreme destination is. They're thinking, as I mentioned before, to have all these material acquisitions, my life is perfect. But we see, they get so many acquisitions, They get themselves brand new, this, that, the other thing, nice car. They want another car. They want another boat, a bigger boat. When they get a bigger boat, it means they need a bigger garage. It needs a bigger house. And it never goes on. Never ends. It just goes on and on and on. And there's no end to it. There's no end to material desire. So it's foolish to think you'll satisfy material desires. Okay, we've got material desires, just tolerate it. Don't try and satisfy it because you never will. Because you satisfy one, another one will come up. You satisfy this, another one will come up. It never ends. Just simply use our life to serve Krishna. But because of this bad... And it's not just the school education, right? That's one element of the education which is lacking. But also the leaders. Because the values the leaders set in the society, just like, talk about values and role models, because there's a recent scandal, I'm sure many of you know about it because cricket is such an important thing. there's a recent scandal in the cricket world where the Australian cricketers were found cheating, tampering with the ball in South Africa, so they were sacked and sent home in disgrace. Now, one of these guys, I just saw a news thing yesterday about it. This guy, one of the guys who was involved, and I think he was the vice captain of the team. It goes to show you, the quality of people they've got playing cricket. The captain and the vice captain were both involved and both sacked. He's saying, he's going to accept the adjudication of the cricket board because he wants to be a better person. He wants to be a role model. Can you imagine that? The guy is caught cheating and he sees himself as a role model. What does it teach children? It teaches them that cheating is okay. It teaches them that this kind of, like you see, like they're dominant role models. I remember years ago the government put out this advertising campaign where they were showing the effect of role models, how role models shape children, right? And Dad was out there, the great Australian Barbie, out the back with beer in one hand, cigarette in the other hand. Tells his child, run and get us a tinny or whatever they call them, So the child goes and gets a beer. And then you see, like the camera sort of fast forward to 20 years later, and the child's standing there doing exactly the same thing with a beer and cigarette and, So they don't really, people don't really understand the effects they have through their activities, how they affect their dependents. And this is why it says in the 5th canto of the Bhagvatam that Guru Nashat Sat Sajjana Shat Pita Nashat Janani Nashat Sat, that one should not be a guru, a spiritual master, a worshipful demigod, a king, a leader, a father, a mother, or any of these persons unless you're capable of delivering your dependents from the cycle of birth and death. Because this is actually the business of the human form of life. And if you can't do this, don't take a position of responsibility. If you cannot deliver them, don't take a position of responsibility. Because this is what we're meant to do. And we're meant to guide people on how to become delivered. That's the responsibility of being a devotee of Krishna. I remember years ago, I think I was traveling with Ramai Swami at the time on the bus program. And someone, I was just talking about the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. And they said, the guy said to me, he said, you're trying to say, it's kind of like, it was almost like trying to criticize me, I thought. And he said, you're trying to set yourself up as some kind of example, aren't you? And I thought about it for a second. I said, yes, actually, that's exactly what we're doing. Because you need examples to follow. Because everyone follows someone. We all follow someone. Fortunately, we all have the good fortune of following Srila Prabhupada. But not everyone has that good fortune. So many people are following like these movie stars and these rock stars and cricket, people, and look at their behavior. Look at their activities, their qualities. They're smoking, they're drinking alcohol, they're engaging in illicit activities, they're killing animals. And this is one of the reasons why, just to let you know, why we don't offer things prepared by non-devotees to Krishna. Because they have no values at all. Things prepared by non-devotees, we should never offer them directly to the deities. We should only offer things prepared by devotees, because the purity of intention is there. We're doing it for Krishna's pleasure. But the whole society, the whole system is completely out of whack. No one actually knows what is the goal of life. No one knows what are values and what are not values in this age. And people have no values at all. And that, as I mentioned before, every subsequent generation, you'll find things are becoming less and less and less value. The politicians, things that were, when I was a child were considered, you just didn't do it. Now they're passing laws saying it's okay to do it. So the values are decreasing more and more all the time. And that's the nature of this age. Even if they come to know about it, they have unfortunately become victims of misguided teachers. So even if people, understand there's higher values, higher principles in life, because they become so conditioned by misguided teachers, it's such a struggle for them to overcome the difficulties of this age. And we see, so many times, people, they come, they try to practice Krishna consciousness, but they're dragged away by their senses. They're dragged away by their conditioned nature. They struggle with it. It's so deeply ingrained that they can't overcome it. In this age, men are victims not only of different political creeds and parties, but also of different types of sense gratificatory diversions such as cinemas, sports, gambling clubs, mundane libraries, bad association, smoking, drinking, cheating, pilfering, bickerings, and so on. Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, mobile phones, etc., 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 etc. It just increases more and more. Every day there's some new thing coming out on the internet, some new social media thing, some diversion. It's all it is. It's just a diversion to take you away from Krishna. It's just a diversion to cloud your mind more and more and more so you don't understand what is my purpose, what is my goal of life. You know? If I've got 20,000 friends on Facebook, eureka, I've hit success. And how many of them do you actually know? How many of them actually care about you? There was one thing recently where some young lady put up she was going to kill herself on Facebook or YouTube or something like that. And not one of her friends, her so-called friends, tried to do anything about it. Tried to notify any authorities that this person's suicidal or anything like that. No, they all wanted to watch. What kind of friends are they? A friend is one who actually has our interest at heart. Their minds are always disturbed and full of anxieties due to so many different engagements. In this age, many unscrupulous men manufacture their own religious faiths which are not based on any revealed scriptures, and very often people who are addicted to sense gratification are attracted by such institutions. Consequently, in the name of religion, so many sinful acts are being carried on that the people in general have neither peace of mind nor health of body, because the mind becomes disturbed and one's health becomes eroded by these sinful activities. The student brahmachari communities are no longer being maintained, and householders do not observe the rules and regulations of the grihastha ashram. I mean, it's a simple thing. To be a grihastha is a simple thing. You follow the regular principles, you give in charity. Simple. That's the varna of a grihastha, is to give in charity. The varna of a brahmachari is to serve, especially the spiritual master. To live a very simple life and perform austerity. And the vanaprasthas live a very simple life, and the grihasthas, the sannyasis' business is to preach. But because the brahmacharis are not following their varna, the grihasthas are not following their varna, then as Prabhupada goes on to say here, consequently, the so-called vanaprasthas and sannyasis who come out of such grihastha ashrams are easily deviated from the rigid path. Very difficult to maintain sannyas in this age because they've come from brahmachari and grihastha where they can't follow properly their path. Even I heard a conversation some years back where they're redefining what illicit sex is. Sex life is meant for procreation. Simple, plain and simple. Nothing more than that. And you do it once a month. Now, if anyone knows anything about the anatomy of a woman, they have a menstrual cycle. And generally, I can't remember exactly how many days it is. I think it may be 5, but maybe someone knows more about it than I do. But 5 days after the menses is finished, the flow is finished, is when a woman is most fertile. That is when you're supposed to engage in sex life, because then the woman will get pregnant. That's the whole point of it. And if you don't want any more children, bus, no more sex life. But, some devotees have redefined that. Why? Because they want to enjoy their senses. So can you imagine, their idea is to enjoy their senses. What kind of sannyasi is going to come out of such an ashram? No. The business of the human form of life is regulated sense gratification. We control our senses. Why? So we can focus on Krishna. So we can stop this, the mind, this what's it called? I think it's Baruta, is it? I can't remember the word, but the mind is constantly churning. It's turning round and round and round and round and round, constantly looking at this, looking at that, go here, do this, do that. Mind never stops. And if you engage your senses, in the objects of the senses without restriction, the mind's turnings increase. And therefore the living entity becomes more and more disturbed because the mind is just going at breakneck speed. So the idea is to control, to regulate the mind, to regulate the senses. That's what Varnashram is about, is regulated sense enjoyment to get to the point of renunciation. So we can give up all this material life simply to serve Krishna. In the Kali Yuga, the whole atmosphere is surcharged with faithlessness. Another very powerful statement from Srila Prabhupada. In this age, everyone is so faithless, they don't believe that God even exists. It's all just a figment of your imagination. And if that's the case, where did it all come from? If there is no God, if there is no Creator, where did all of this come from? Interesting story. Isaac Newton, he was a religious person. You've all heard of Isaac Newton? He was trying to convince one of his friends that God was the creator and the whole universe came from God. He wasn't having much luck. So he had a model of the universe made in his lounge room, like big, massive, filled up the whole lounge room. And, they had the sun and the planets moving around the sun and all the different stars and the whole thing going on. And he invited his friend over and he just showed him this model of the universe. And his friend comes, Isaac, this is so amazing. I've never seen such a model of the universe. Where did it come from? Who made it? He said, I don't know, I just came down to my lounge room this morning and there it was. And his friend's saying, no, nothing happens like that. Someone must have made it. No, seriously, I just came down, it was just there. And his friend didn't believe him. He said, no, can't happen. Nothing comes without a creator. He said, exactly. And the universe has a creator, and that's God. God created the universe. So, people in this age, they're so faithless, they don't even accept that there's a creator. The scientist tells them there was a cloud of gas. Once upon a time, in a far-off, universe, there was a cloud of gas. Remember when you're kids, your mum used to read fairy tales to you? Once upon a time, long, long ago, in a whatever, they lived, It's just like a fairy tale, Where did the gas come from? It's got to come from someone. They can get it from AGL. Even if we accept their model of creation, the gas came from somewhere. And okay, we've got some gas, and then the gas starts to move. Okay, who pushed it? Nothing moves. Like this book will sit here, the Bhagvatam will sit here for generations if no one picks it up. If no one comes and moves any of this here, it will stay here till the building crumbles and this decays. It won't move on its own. Inanimate matter cannot move on its own. So who caused the gas to move? And it started to swirl and then condensed and then kapow, there was an explosion. So even if you accept that, which we don't, but even if you do accept this as the notion of the creation, where did the gas come from and who caused it to move? There has to be an external input. Otherwise, the law of thermodynamics, which all the scientists like to tout as being, like what do they call it, an inviolable principle that you can't, it has to be that energy is conserved. You can't lose or increase the energy. It's always conserved. You have a certain ecosystem, there's so much energy in that system, and it always stays constant. So their theory contradicts one of their, unchangeable laws. So their theories are just nonsense. Men are no longer interested in spiritual values. Material sense gratification is now the standard of civilization. For the maintenance of such material civilizations, man has formed complex nations and communities, and there is a constant strain of hot and cold wars between these different groups. Just like right now, between China and America. They're going to start a trade war. Like America puts $50 billion worth of sanctions on or taxes on China. China does it back. America's now put more on China. So guess what? China's going to do it back to them. And it's going to escalate. It's going to go up and up and up and up and up. And everyone will suffer. Of course, Donald Trump's not going to suffer because he's got plenty of money, and the other one's not going to suffer. But the common man will suffer because the price of everything will increase because of all these taxes they put on them. And it's just the foolishness. They're thinking they're going to increase their sense gratification. But ultimately what happens is people suffer more. It has become very difficult, therefore, to raise the spiritual standard due to the present distorted values of human society. The sages of Naimisharanya are anxious to disentangle all fallen souls, and here they are seeking the remedy from Srila Sutta Goswami. So you can see the greatness of these personalities. They're not ordinary personalities assembled at Naimisharanya. They're very, very great personalities. They're anxious about the suffering of the living entities in this age, and they're looking for the solution. They want to find the solution to help people. And that's our role. We, as members of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, we need to take up that same mood, is to be anxious about the suffering living entities in this world. How can we help them overcome the difficulties of this age? How can we help them to understand who they are and what their duty is? That's the business of ISKCON. And Prabhupada said, this movement will save the world in the darkest hour. So by this Krishna consciousness movement, these people who are suffering in this world, they can actually come to know who they are, what is their duty, and what is the goal of life. Okay, so I'll finish there. Is there any questions at all? Prabhu, nice to see you again.
Thank you so much for the class. Normally when we speak about why somebody is so disturbed, usually people and devotees go into the parentage of that individual. There's been some emotional lack or some instability in their upbringing. And they also bring it to excessive sense gratification. That the intelligence is not, the innocence is lost. The intelligence is not able to function as it naturally would. Just inquire about things, be naturally curious about things that are around. How do we connect these 2 points to the statements made in this verse? Is it true to say that these 2 things are fundamental causes, or are they deeper causes as mentioned?
The things we're seeing here are just symptoms. They're not the cause, they're the symptoms of the cause, of the root problem. Now the root problem, this is discussed in the Nectar of Devotion, and it gives 3 causes: sinful activities, sinful desire, and avidya. Avidya is the root of everything. What does avidya mean? It means ignorance. And what is the ignorance? Ignorance of the true nature of the self. So because the living entity is thinking that I am the controller, I am the enjoyer, Ishwaraham aham bhogi, siroham balavam sukhi, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. Because the living entity is thinking he's the controller, he's the enjoyer, he's perfect, he's happy, he's powerful. Therefore he suffers. Because he's thinking he's something he's not. If you spend your whole life thinking you're a teapot, are you going to have a happy life? No, because you're in delusion. That's what crazy people do. Is they think they're teapots. Or there was it doesn't matter. But I remember something years ago. This guy was going around saying, "I'm a teapot. I'm a teapot. I'm a teapot." It's crazy. He's thinking he's something he's not. Therefore, in this world, people are thinking they're something not. Ultimately, they're thinking they're the body. They're not. And all these things come about. The parenting. This is just a manifestation of someone's karma. You get born into a particular environment according to your karma, and that environment then brings out your karma, brings out your karmic due, if you like. If you're destined to have these types of frustrations because of what you did in your past life, then you get born with parents who are not particularly skillful at being a parent, and that then causes this to manifest. You're not born with it sort of manifesting out of the womb. You're put into a situation, like sometimes it's particularly bodily deformities, yes, you're born with that. But when it comes to like personality type of stuff and things that are shaped by your environment, then that's, you're born into that environment, so that shapes you. Just like here we are, we're born in Australia. So our karma is to talk with a funny accent, at least according to other people. We think they've all got funny accents. But you get born in Australia, you have particular values. This country has certain values, whereas you're born in India, there are different values. I was just reflecting on this the other day. I spoke about it a bit last night also. In India, you'll see young men. If an elderly gentleman comes in the room, generally speaking, a young Indian male will go and get them a chair, even if they don't know them. They just do it because that's part of the cultural values that are still prevalent in India. Whereas in Australia, get your own chair. Or I want the chair. There's different values. So according to your karma, you're born into that situation, which then shapes you to be like that. So that's just what you're talking is just a symptom of something deeper.
So it's like all sinful people have kind of been put into one class. And what we see,
All what people?
people with previous sinful background have now been put into the stage, into different environments, and then sinful people clashing.
We're all sinful. The fact we're here in this material world is evidence of it. Because if we weren't sinful, we'd be with Krishna. Literally, if you look at it from the Gaudiya Vaishnava perspective, the Vaishnava perspective, sinful means, any sinful activity means an activity which is not connected with Krishna. So the fact we're here in this material world indicates we're performing sinful activities to one extent or another. So the idea of practicing Krishna consciousness is to overcome that sinful propensity, those sinful activities, and act for Krishna's pleasure. Because that's what we're for. Just like we were talking, one of the ladies asked a question last night about Tulsi. Tulsi's only business is to serve Krishna. So we make Tulsi happy when we offer her leaves to Krishna, when we offer garlands, and that's how she becomes happy, is when we offer her to Krishna. She's not for our pleasure. She's not for anyone else's pleasure. She's there for the pleasure of Krishna. And ultimately, that's the function of the living entity, where we exist, or we need to get to this point where we have this consciousness, is we exist only for the pleasure of Krishna. Not for the pleasure of my body, not for the pleasure of my senses, not for the pleasure of my family. My existence is only for the pleasure of Krishna. When we get to that point, then we'll become happy. Haribol.
Describe the situation as very, very serious. And so how can we remain determined and practice our Krishna consciousness so that in spite of all this, the disturbances which are all around us, we can continue practicing over the life?
This is one of those types of questions where there's no one answer. It's very broad, and at least in my experience, different persons are inspired by different things. But for certain, strictly following the practices of Krishna consciousness will help us to maintain our, being attentive, to the details of Krishna consciousness and not allowing it to slip. Cultivating humility, very important. We need to cultivate humility. We need to cultivate knowledge. But as Prabhupada says in the Bhagavad Gita, without humility, there's no knowledge. You can't understand things. Because why? If we go into a meeting or into a room full of people and I think I'm the most intelligent person in the room, how are you ever going to learn anything? How are you ever going to improve yourself if you already think you're the best? And that's so symptomatic of Kali Yuga, is everyone thinks they're the best. In this age, the pauper is proud of their penny. They've got nothing. They've got no particular ability, no particular knowledge, no particular skill, and they're so proud of it. They're useless. Manda samanda matayo. Useless. Useless age. Yet they're so proud. So humility is a very big key to growing in Krishna consciousness. Also, something else that is very helpful is meet people. Don't just talk to them about Krishna, ask them about themselves. Because, most people you find the most important topic in their life, me. So ask them about themselves. What do you do? What sort of work you do, and what's it like, and stuff like that. And you'll start to see how much they're suffering. Spend time with people. You'll see how much they don't see it, but we have knowledge. We can actually see, what the living entity is meant to be doing in this world. So by spending time with people, developing this compassionate nature to try to help people, then you'll become more convinced that I don't want to go back to that. That's the worst possible thing, to want to go back to what we were doing before. There's just some thoughts on it. It's a big topic, and I think there's many different ways of answering and many different ways of approaching it. But I don't think it's a black and white. And each person's going to be different, because you have what inspires you in Krishna consciousness. And what inspires me is different. Because we're all individual. We're all unique. No two devotees are the same. No two people are the same. They may have many traits and characteristics similar, but no two people are the same. So whatever connects you with Krishna, that's what it's about. Bhakti means connecting with Krishna. So whatever connects you with Krishna, that's what you need to do. And do it with great enthusiasm. Utsahan nistya dharyat. Rupa Goswami says, do it with great enthusiasm. Okay? I think, yeah.
When we are on Krishna and spiritual world, why does that thought of comes to that mind that we want to enjoy separately from Krishna, and why do we fall down to material world? Because
Sorry, go ahead.
it's like you said that we see a role model and we grow according to that. But in spiritual world, we see all role models who are pure Vaishnavas serving Krishna, we are happy. But why does the thought come to ourselves that we have to enjoy separately from Krishna and God?
Srila Prabhupada was asked the same question. You know what his answer was? Yes, why? Why did we do that? Such a stupid thing to do. Such a stupid thing. It's like, I got off the plane yesterday at the airport, and I was just looking at this propeller plane over there, and I thought, God, if you walked into that propeller, it would just slice you up into little pieces, right? And that's what it's like, It's just like some idiot has just walked into the propeller. Coming to this material world is just like that. And that's what's happening to us. This world is just slicing us up into little pieces. So why did we do that? Because we're stupid. That's all, we're just stupid. Why did we do that? We're there. But then there's other ways of looking at it also. According to our acharyas, we're still there. We're still in the spiritual world because the relationship is eternal. How can that change? If it's eternal, it means it has no beginning, it has no end, it doesn't change. We are in relationship with Krishna. We're just in a state of forgetfulness right now. Because why? We were thinking, I want to be like that. I want to be like Krishna. I want to be the controller and the enjoyer. Why is he always the center of attention? Why can't I be the center of attention? That momentary thought process, I remember Prabhupada explained that to Bhavananda, that momentary thought process is the whole duration of time you're here in this material world. You go, oh no, I don't like that. No, Krishna's, he's the center. That's it. Millions of lifetimes is that long because the time is very different. But while we're down here, that all seems very far, distant and removed. So the idea is to finish up your business as quick as you can and give up that thought process. And you'll get back there and you'll think, what did I think that for? Just give it all up. Okay, thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada ki, Sarveta Bhakti ki, Shri Radha Gopinath ki, Jai Jai Gopinath ki, Hari Hari Bol.